Okay, let's grow the show, baby.
All right.
Let's do it.
Ready? All right.
Action.
Back. Ready? Yeah. We're back for another edition of the show.
Episode of the show. You did that wrong the last time. Another episode.
Okay, we're back for another episode of the show. Grow the show.
Gutty Matheson. He meant to introduce me. Here's my name, my list of accomplishments. Grow the show.
Bob Loomis.
Joe Schmidt.
Usually I do that, but I want the voice to step up a little bit. Contribute something.
We're going to start to earn our keep. We're going to start to earn our keep.
They're going to start to earn their keep. We got Bob Loomis today, and thrilled to have Bob.
Special guest this time. Drove all the way from Marion, Overbrook, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
6-time fraternity champion, Hall of Famer, legend in the industry, and I think when you hear the phrase "made it," I think Bob's the epitome of that in the horse business.
Absolutely,
I mean, it's incredible what you've done in the business, and super impressive to guys like me growing up. You were one of my idols, not just for the horse training, as these guys know. I mean, I like the business part of the business as much as the horse training, and you were a role model for all of us.
Well, I love the business part of it, and this horse industry, it's just good. It's been good to so many of us. It's kind of
last time with Dell, we kind of skipped around on a time frame. Like, you think we could, let's start from the beginning here and talk about what it was like for Bob for when you first started your reining horse training career and how you started it, and let's start from the beginning.
Well, let's go back further than that. Did your parents have horses? How did you end up having the interest in them?
My folks had hunters and jumpers, so I never rode a Western saddle till I was 16 years old. I grew up riding English horses. Then my folks got a divorce and sold the horses when I was 10. So I quit school when I was 16 and bought a horse. and rode colts at night, and worked a job. And then finally when I was 23, I started training professionally and started my own business.
What kind of horses professionally when you started?
I rode anything they'd pay me to ride.
Cool.
I got a lot of those old broncs out of the sand hills that were 5-6 years old and weren't halter broke. And
there was no specialization back then.
See, when I started, nobody specialized in anything. I mean, if you were a horse trainer, I showed halter horses. I trained and showed pleasure horses, trail horses. I had amateurs and youth kids that I trained horses for. My thing that I really loved was reining horses, but at that time, reining was just a quarter horse show event. This is back when we had 2 buckets at the end of the arena, and we loped a small figure 8, a large figure 8, run down on the left side of the bucket, rolled back, and come out of the right side. That's when I started riding reining horses.
Wow.
And then I started training professionally in 66, and that was the first year of the reining fraternity. Well, I missed the first year, but then I was at the fraternity from 67 on every year. But once the NRHA started, of course we had the fraternity every year, but that was about it. Then after the fraternity was over, I'd bring my fraternity horse home and I'd teach it to work 5 or 6 more events, and I'd sell it to a non-pro or an amateur or a youth.
Well,
that's where most of my fraternity horses went in the early years.
Even go back before that. I mean, you said you showed your first reiner, at a quarter horse show, and that's where you got the bug, but where were you at in your life in 1967 when you went to your first fraternity?
Well, where I really got the reining bug was before that. I was dating a girl. I was 18 years old. I was going out with a girl from Wahoo, Nebraska, and her daddy had a horse named Magnolia Denny. Magnolia Denny was the 1961 World's Champion, AQHA Honor Roll World's Champion, reigning horse. And George trained a lot of his own horses, and he showed AQHA, and he had several that he liked the reining. Well, I'd go see Bonnie, and I'd end up in the barn with George riding horses half the night. And that's where I really got my reining bug, was going up there and riding with him and riding old Magnolia Denny. And he was so broke, and that turnaround and that stop and all that stuff just intrigued me. Because up to that point, I'd been riding a lot with a cutter, Dave Martin there in Lincoln, and I'd mainly rode cutters up to that point. But once I started riding with George Sherwood and started riding Magnolia Denny, and he had several other mares. In fact, when he died, he gave me all his brood mares.
Oh, damn.
But that's where I really got the reining bug.
So how old were you when you bought your place in B?
Well, my first place, when I started training, it was I went to the Xarban Rodeo, and this was in 1966, and I rented a barn on the edge of Omaha, and I lived in the tack room, and I had about 5 or 6 horses in training, and life got good. And pretty soon,
That's great.
I was doing what I wanted to do. I remember I had a cot, and I had my clothes hanging on a broomstick, and I had a space heater, and I thought life was good. And so I was there for about 6-8 months, and then I got a chance to rent a place in Lincoln called Pioneer Stables. And I bought that. It had a 10-stall barn in the house, or I rented it the first couple of years. And then I eventually bought it. And I was there 11 years, and then I went to B, Nebraska, because I started my breeding program. This was back in the late 60s. I was getting real interested in brood mares because I was wanting a Fraternity horse, and I was having to ride reject cutters, reject pleasure horses, reject halter horses, and I'd go through 32-year-olds to find one that I could win something on. So what I did is I'd watch every time I'd go to the Fraternity and I'd see these really good mares, I'd keep track of where they went. And when all of a sudden, when they weren't being showed anymore, I'd find out where they were. And I bought a bunch of those great old mares for $1,000 a piece. Because once they were burnt up,
And nobody
wanted
them.
and there was no horse show left in them, I could buy them for a little bit of nothing.
And how old do you think you were then?
I was 23 when I started training professionally. So I'd say from about that time on, I'd watch. And when I started my breeding program, raising reining horses, the only other person in America that was breeding and raising reining horses was Tom Fuller at Willowbrook Farms. Well, to show you how great of a horse Joe Cody was, Tom thought the best mares were the ones that cost the most money. Well, in those days, what brought the most money was halter and pleasure mares. Well, he had some of the best halter and pleasure mares in the world. Now, you got to remember, halter and pleasure was different then. Like,
You could ride the halter horses then.
well, yeah, like Cassandra Cody's mother was the world's champion 2-year-old halter mare. Well, she was a Blondie's Dude. Now, you guys probably don't remember Blondie's Dude. They were a little tough to get through, but boy, once you got them broke, they were great horses. I remember when I was really just getting started, you'd come to a little quarter horse show in Oklahoma. There'd be Magnolia Denny, a lot of his colts, Blondie's Dude, Harlem, and I mean, those were some of the better riding horses for what we're doing in those days. I didn't start raising reiners because I thought it was going to make money. I started raising them because nobody was raising. My passion was the Fraternity, and nobody was raising the kind of horses that I had to have to win on.
I mean, that takes quite a bit of, wherewithal of your surroundings of, to figure that out
Well,
because
foresight. Who at that age
Yeah.
is thinking about breeding? None of us were thinking at that age, thinking 3-4 years in the future. We're always thinking about today and tomorrow, and that's
so
it.
how many times did you question those decisions? I mean, looking back on it, it's easy to go, well, those were great decisions. But how many sleepless nights did you have?
I never even thought about it. All I knew
That's
was
crazy.
I needed to be mounted.
Yeah.
And nobody had the kind of horses that I needed weren't there. So to me, I mean, can't believe some of the crap I went to the fraternity on those first few years. And so I figured, these mares that are winning, that are really nice, I'd just breed them with the best thing I had in the barn. And at that time, my first stud was a horse named Okie Power Leo. He was a little chocolate Okie Leo son, and he was better than anything else I had to ride, and he wasn't nothing compared to what we have today. But I bred all those mares to him, and I raised some stuff I could win on. And then every time I'd go to Willowbrook Farms, I started riding for Tom in '76. He called me up one day and he said, "This is Tom Fuller." Well, I didn't know who Tom Fuller was. I knew. And he says, "Well, I got 2 horses I want to send you." And I said, "Well, I'm full right now, but I'll call you as soon as I have an open stall." He says, "Well, one of these horses' name's High Proof." And I said, "Wait a minute, I've been trying to beat that son of a bitch all year long."
It's all right.
Bob, you can say that on this show.
It's the internet.
Not one of
Yeah.
our words. You can't say.
Anyway, I said, "Wait a minute, Tom Fuller, is this Tom Fuller from Willowbrook Farms?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Now I think those stalls just opened.
Just opened up.
I said, "Okay, what's the, well, Anthony had quit and he was going on his own. So he called me up, and then the other one was Benita Paprika. Said she's a 3-year-old fraternity horse. Well, this is May of her 3-year-old year, and I get her with 30 days riding on her. Well, I mean, I'd ride her 2 hours a day, but I'd only school her about 5-10 minutes. I'd never let her sweat. And then I'd walk her or sit on her or go. I was right next door to a 640-acre park. I'd go just ride her through the park, or I might just go ride her out in the park and school her out there a little bit. But I got a lot of training on her in a short time by never getting her hot, never getting her
Just
time.
doing a little bit at a
Just
time.
a little bit at a time. And I did the same thing with Sophie Oak. I got her in June of her 3-year-old year, and she'd been on cattle just cutting.
And so back then, and we touched on this with Tim, we used to go to the fraternity, and it was a little bit before my time too, but not much. I mean, I was a kid, but still remember it. We used to go to the fraternity when it was in Columbus,
Yeah.
and then come home and start the 2-year-olds.
Yeah.
Remember that? So, I mean, we train them so much longer now than we
You
used
used to have a year of training on them. That was the plan.
Yep.
In those early years, I'd have about 30 colts a year. Once I moved to B and my breeding program was really rolling, I'd raise about 30 colts a year. And when they were 2, this is back when Guy Woods worked for me, and Joe and Mark.
Mark Wagman, Joe Hayes.
Yeah, we'd bring all those colts in, and not all at the same time, but all 30 of those colts would get 60 days as a 2-year-old. We'd put 60 days on them, get them where they ride, lope, guide, starting to do maneuvers a little bit, and turn them out. And on the day we got home from the fraternity, everything would be sold except the ones I wanted to keep for the fraternity. Then we'd put a full year on them from then to the next fraternity. But as 2-year-olds, they just had 60 days.
They put 60 days on them and turned them out.
That's what I did up
And he was ahead of the game, because a lot of people didn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted them to, the reason I wanted 60 days on them as a 2-year-olds, I wanted to know which ones I wanted before I started selling.
Right.
Makes
Because I'm
sense.
fixing to sell heck out of them. But I wanted to pick, and all my life, I picked 3, and the 3 I picked are the 3 I went to the fraternity with.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty incredible that you were that structured and that strict and that business oriented from the very beginning. Because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people probably weren't that way. They just They just rolled with what they had, and you actually had a plan in place.
Well, I've always been real big on the future. Well, I didn't start my reining breeding program because I thought it would make me money. I did it because of necessity to what I had to have to try to raise the kind of horses I could win on. Mm-hmm. So, then in later years, I started my Longhorn program. Really, my Longhorn program was my retirement program. My retirement program, I wanted to be, and the horse business financed them in those early years. But that was my retirement program, because I retired, I probably had a few more good years in me when I retired, but I basically had burnout. I was tired of staying up all night, riding all night, and
well, and skipping ahead to that, now we're skipping a little bit because you brought it up. You always, how old were you when you retired?
55.
55. Had a lot of good years left in you.
Yeah.
And at that time, there was only a few $1 million riders.
Yeah.
And you were just that far. Did it ever?
I don't know why I didn't stay. At that time, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
If I have any regret, the only regret I have is that I didn't I only had to go about 140,000 more.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
To hit it. And it's like one time, I won't say who it is, but one trainer was talking about a stud horse, I said, well, to me, for a stud horse, if I'm going to promote him, he's got to have a good show record, and he's got to win over 100,000 before you even think about it. He says, well, Wiz never won 100,000, and he made it. I said, well, if you look at Wiz and his era, Wiz, Chick, Dunnett, none of them did. 50,000 was a lot of money in those days.
Yeah.
The only way you won 100,000 on a horse in that era is if you won the Fraternity after 1983.
Yeah.
But before that, it was impossible.
Well, and you might look back on it and regret not getting to the million, but how many other guys have won the Fraternity 6 times?
6 times.
And you better believe every trainer in those buildings knows that. So,
Well, it's funny. The first time I won the Fraternity was 76. Well, in those days, the night before the finals, we always had a Calcutta. And there'd be a lot of drinking going on. And everybody get pretty plastered. Well, I bought my mare in the Calcutta. I bought Bonita Paprika. Well, I won more money in the Calcutta. I won $8,500 in the Calcutta. I won $6,500 for
winning the Fraternity.
that is awesome.
kidding.
Now that's a story. That's a great
6,500.
story.
That's all you want. Wow.
Yeah. And you know what? Winning the million
cool.
may have meant something to you, but it doesn't mean anything to anybody else in the industry, because everybody knows what you've done, and both on the riding side, the showing side, and on the breeding side. So
I love to show. I love to train. I love to show. I got a divorce in '93, and I was just kind of went a little wild there for a couple of years, and and I just kind of got sidetracked.
Yeah. Well, I've heard some of the stories, because my wife and your daughter were very good friends at that point in time.
Yeah, I know.
So we don't need to get into that.
We don't want to get into that.
That's
No, for any of our sakes, let's leave all that go.
That's right.
So from B, Nebraska, how old? So what year did you move down to Marietta?
Well, I was in B. I moved. I left Pioneer Stables in '78, and I bought 400 acres in B, and that's when I was really expanding my breeding program. And I was there for 7 years. Well, then in '85, I bought that ranch in Overbrook, and I moved here in '85. So I only stayed in B for about 7 years. I was at Pioneer Stables for 11 years, B for 7 years, and then I moved here. But I'll tell you the reason I moved here. In '85, early '85, I did a clinic at Beppo's house in Italy,
Peppo Guahini.
Beppo Guahini, and I could see the writing on the wall. And I was also on the board and very active on the board and what was going on in the industry. And I could see this European movement coming to the NRHA. And in the mid 80s, we were going through a recession. It was a bad recession. And you'd drive up and down Albury and around here, and there's horse places for sale. And I mean, well, I saw this thing. I said, if I'm going to get in on this European thing, I got to get to Texas or Oklahoma. I got to get on I-35 somewhere between the city and Dallas-Fort Worth and at least 5 miles from the interstate if I'm going to really be able to. So that's the reason I said I've got to get, because like being Nebraska, I would have missed all that.
Right.
Well, as soon as I got to Oklahoma, I moved here. I bought the land in the summer of '85. I moved here January 1st of '86. And I mean, when I lived in Nebraska, I'd ride all day. Then I'd be on the phone all night, creating business, selling horses, talking to customers. I mean, I really had to hustle to make a living because the only thing else that lived in Nebraska was me and a bunch of coyotes. I mean, we were in the Tules now. So when I moved to Oklahoma, I tripped over more business than I could create up there.
Right.
Well, during that recession, I'm sending 50, 60 head of horses every 2 or 3 months to Europe. I was making more money than I'd ever made in my life. Because when that first boom come and all the Europeans first come, first they wanted to buy all the cheap stuff. Then all of a sudden here come Archie. He wanted to buy all the best stuff. Well, then pretty soon they couldn't beat Archie, so everybody else kind of started. At first, like the Germans come, they wanted to buy all the cheap stuff. Archie was the first one that come over here and wanted to buy the good stuff.
Right.
And he did. He bought the best stuff.
Well, we've had this discussion before. I remember when Archie was put forward for the Hall of Fame here. Mm-hmm. A lot of people here were like, I don't understand why Archie is going to go in the Hall of Fame. Yeah,
I do.
You guys have no idea what he did for the reining horse industry in Europe. He made it happen.
He financed it. You can't imagine the money that man's put in this industry.
Yeah.
Now, if there's anybody in the Hall of Fame that belongs there, it's Mr. Archie.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
It is. I 100% believe. People that would think he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame just don't know nothing about the industry.
Yeah.
Well, the cool part about it is earlier tonight you guys were talking about people that aren't in the industry anymore. He was in the industry hard and heavy then, and he's in the industry at the highest level still today.
I sold Archie his first reining horse in '87. Up to '87, he was in halter horses. Strictly halter horses, yeah. He was buying horses from Jerry Wells and Tommy Marion and all those guys. And '87, one of the first horses I sold him was Sophie Oak.
Wow.
And she wasn't for sale. He drove me nuts until he finally got her bought.
Do you remember what you sold her for?
Yes, I do. I needed to build a house.
Do you want to tell it on camera?
No, I better not. Archie might not like it. But he gave it quite a bit for that time. I needed a house. But see, when I first moved here, I said, now, I'm not borrowing any money to do anything. If I can't pay cash for it, I'm not going to do it. So I needed a house. I needed to sell something.
So we need to go back to 1985 and see what it cost to build a house.
Right.
Crunch the numbers minus inflation, and that's what you sold her for.
That's what it brought.
Was it a 3-bedroom house?
It is a pretty big house.
Now that is fantastic. Okay, so he sold Sophia for a pretty big house.
I tell you what, I can take you to that old ranch over there, the one my first place. I can tell you which horse paid for everything on that ranch.
That's cool. That is super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, when you moved down here, you were still either either you've been lucky a lot of times in your life, or you really had good foresight of what was going to happen, and I'm betting on the latter. Yeah, you know, you moved down to Marion, where most of the business was in the Albury Pilot Point area. You bought up there where it was, you could get a lot of land, a lot more affordable.
I'll tell you why I did that. See, when I decided, see, Joe moved down here. Well, Joe, in all the years I've been in business, I've only had 2 employees that give me a year's notice when they were leaving. And that was Joe Hayes and Dean Latimer. Well, Joe, he said, you know, I want to go on my own after the fraternity next year. And I was doing a clinic in Gainesville. He said, do you care if I go with you to that clinic? He said, I'm kind of looking at that Gainesville area. So I said, sure, come on. So he was great because he loved to do them clinics. And so we come down there, and while we were here, he rented a place. And so then after when the fraternity was over, he had a place rented and ready to go. Well, then when I saw what way this foreign deal was going, and that if you wanted to be involved, you wanted to be somewhere on I-35 between the big cities. Well, I'd come down here and I'd stay with Joe, and I was looking for, I'd bring my fraternity horses so I could ride them and look for places. And I was looking between Denton and Gainesville is where I wanted to move. And I wanted a big place because I wanted my broodmare program. I wanted about 400 to 500 acres because I wanted my broodmares and some cattle. And I couldn't find it down here. I could not find a big piece with a good location. Every time the big pieces with a good location were, whoa.
Yeah.
So I crossed the Red River I did a clinic at Texas A&M, and a guy from the Noble Foundation in Ardmore was there. And I told him what I was looking for. He said, well, there's some good places around Ardmore here. He said, let me put my feelers, and he found that first ranch, and it was just what I wanted. I bought it for $600 an acre.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
yeah, I lived there for 27 years. All the improvements I put on it and everything, and when I sold it, I made over $1 million profit on it and lived there for 27 years.
Yeah.
And then the land where I live now, I bought it. I was buying that land up while I lived there. I was just going to run cattle there, then I decided to move. But
Yeah, and that's pretty country up there.
it's real pretty good. But the reason I moved up there was because I wanted more pasture. I wanted more grass. I wanted to run broodmares and some cattle, and I just couldn't find that big piece down here.
Yeah, we looked at land. I actually looked at land up in
Well,
that area.
you almost bought that place that Terry BrownShawn bought.
Yes.
That's a beautiful. I remember you
Yep.
dang near bought that.
Yep, we were right there, and what the deciding factor came down to, my wife could not live that far away from civilization.
Yeah.
So it was, yeah, no, at the end of the day, she likes to be, and I do too, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. I mean, I like being, right here, we're 30 minutes away from everything you could ever want in the world, so.
See, I love being out. I love to be out.
Yeah.
Like where I'm at, on my place, once you go up to my barn or my house, there's no neighbors, there's no houses.
But the industry kind of grew around you up there. When did Dick come into the
Well,
picture? Dick
when I
Peter?
first moved there, that was Redneck, Oklahoma, right that area.
It's not still.
Oh, God. Well,
Hey, whoa, hey,
listen,
fellas, whoa, hey, fellas.
listen, there's no more garbage in the ditches. The roads now are asphalt. I mean,
We got
that's
asphalt.
why, yeah. I mean,
That's the determining factor.
You get asphalt, rednecks are gone.
but see, it's right there in the middle of the Red River Valley, and there's a lot of trees, and it's rolling country. And everybody that'd come and see me liked the area, and they'd buy a piece of land and build a place. Well, I've been there 35 years, and guys, there's dozens of horse operators.
Yeah.
Pam sold a lot of them 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
I'm the only one that.
Was Dick the first one?
No, I was the first
I
one.
mean, after you.
Yeah, Dick was the next one. Dick come about 2 years after he just got a divorce, and him and Fraulein Hutzel together, and they weren't married yet. And he decided that they liked it there.
I just caught that. Thank you. I'm a little slow. So he was the next one, but now it's really outside of this area. It's the next. I mean, everybody is.
You know,
is
I
right
love
there.
it up there. I like this area here too. The only thing I have against this area is land is so expensive. Well, like when I first moved up there, you could buy anything you wanted for $500 an acre. Now it'll cost you $4,000 to $5,000 an
Yeah.
acre, but that's good.
Yeah.
If I ever
It's all
sell out,
good.
it'll
Yeah.
be profitable.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's got worth a lot more. But at that time, you could buy it for $500 an acre, man, and build the horse operation and the cattle operation you want, and you couldn't buy it down here for that.
Yeah.
Even back then. Back then, land down here in '85 was bringing $2,500 an acre.
Yeah.
Now I can imagine what it's bringing now.
Yeah, it's gotten stupid now.
Yeah.
Stupid now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at that time, you could buy land down here for $2,500. Well, 500 sounds better than 2,500 to me.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Would you say that a large majority of your business success has been horses or property or cattle, or or is it?
I'd say 75% of what I've made has been with horses. I've done really well with land. I've done really well with cattle.
But the horses paid for it all.
Yeah.
The horses
You don't
fight
have
it.
the land without the horses.
Yeah.
The horses paid for everything.
Yeah.
Topsail Liz alone. I mean, good Lord. I can't even tell you what he did for me. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, how different was he? When you got him, what was that like? Like, how special of a horse was he?
You know, it's funny. That's another story. When he was a yearling, I bought his mother. His mother was a mare named Jeannie Wisbar. And she had 200 random points. A little 15-year-old kid named Tom Macbeth over Jackson, Mississippi.
Tom Macbeth was our bit judge at the Derby this
Yeah.
year. If you don't know who Tom Macbeth is.
Well, when Tom Macbeth was 15 years old, he's showing her. The first time I ever seen her, she was two coming three. We were Jackson, Mississippi. I'm there, Bill Horn's there, everybody's there. Well, here's this little 15-year-old kid riding this pretty little sorrel mare around, and come time for the all-age rein, and he beat us all. Well, I tried buying that mare for years, and she ended up. Well, he won the youth reining on her, and then come kick your ass in the age reining. I mean, she was just, and she was. People see. You go back to your old breeding. You know, she was an old kind of Hollywood Gold, the 3 bars bred mare. The whole horse named C Bars. See, her daddy was a world's champion running horse named C Bars, and C Bars was my 3 bars. And then her mother was a Hollywood Gold bred mare. Well, if you look at your cutters of those days, some of the greatest cutters from that era were C Bars Hollywood Gold or Leon Bars King. And that was just some really good families. Well, I tried buying her forever. And finally, when she was 12 years old, I got her leased. And I raised Wiz. He was my first colt out of her. But Wiz, and then I sold him as a yearling to some Germans. Well, they left him in training with me. Well, I mean, he was one of those horses that when you started him, I mean, he was just unreal. He was so talented and so good-minded. I never rode a horse that soft in the face and that feely in the belly, and everything was so effortless for me. I was like, man, I gotta have this thing back. So I called those people up and I said, well, how's my colt doing? I said, he's doing really good. He says, is he in your top 3? I said, yeah, he's my best horse. I said, well, what do you want for him? And they shot me a price, and I wrote them a check for exactly 5 times what they paid for him. But I got him bought back.
But it was a cheap price to pay. You knew.
And I'll tell you what, I can thank Tim for me getting him. because they were also doing business with Tim, and they called Tim up on the phone and said, Bob offered me X amount of dollars for that colt. What should I do? And Tim said, sell him.
So, I mean, now, I don't know about you guys, but now I try to invest in myself. Like a lot of the nice yearlings, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, I try to own myself or half of. And, I mean, you had the foresight all along the way to be raising your own. You controlled your own destiny from the beginning.
Well,
I mean,
I'll tell you what else I did. I always, like in my early years, I had a customer, I mean, one of the greatest friends I ever had in my life, as well as a good customer. But I'd go down, this is before Joe Cody ever come along, I'd go to Oklahoma, there was a horse named Okie Leo, and I really liked them Okie Leos. They were a little stingy, but I like quick. And they were horses, if you kept them busy, they'd stay quiet. If you started babying them and trotting them, they'd get gassy on you. But if you just use them a little harder, they'd just relax. And I'd go down there and I'd buy those Okie Leos, and I'd get them trained up, and when I had one show ready, I'd sell them to my friend. Well, he owned the tobacco and company there in Nebraska. And so I just sell them to him.
What was his name?
Owen, shoot.
He remembers every horse he ever rode, but he doesn't remember his best friend.
Oh, he was a hell of a good, but
he was a hell of a good
I
guy.
can tell you every horse I sold him.
And how it's spread top and bottom, he just can't. Just think back to like,
But
what name
I'd
did the
sell them to
check have on
him.
it?
Then I sold him a mare named Monica. Well, that was my first really great horse. I had a lot of horses I could, but that was the first horse I could really win about anywhere I went. Well, him and I made a deal that we could neither one of us could ever sell her to anybody else, but we could sell her to each other. Well, I don't know how many times we traded her back and forth over the years, and she ended up dying at my house at 32.
Wow.
But he was a tremendous customer, and once I get them broke, I just sell them to him and then haul them and show them, and then I always had one fraternity horse that belonged to me, and then I'd sell the rest of them to customers. But I always kept one that belonged to me.
I own a lot of horses right now. I just feel good controlling my own destiny, and I think that I'm trying to. I'm trying to show good 3-year-olds, then nobody's going to take better care of me than me.
You're not afraid to sell your good 3-year-olds either.
Yeah.
And that's the key, you know. I mean,
Well, you can't be stupid either. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to take the good money whenever it comes. But
Never turned down a good price.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, never.
And coming from you, I've seen you be stupid.
Every day. Every time I come visit Tom McCutcheon,
You know,
I do something stupid because he tells me.
Tells you every time.
He generally will preface it with, "How dumb are you?" And I'll say, "I don't know. I guess I'm pretty dumb."
you know,
Yeah, sure.
I think a horse trainer, I think the worst decision you can make is for every horse to only have training horses and to not own any. I think that's the biggest mistake you can make, because training horses, you will make enough money to pay the bills. If you ever want to really make money, that's sales.
Yep.
So always, like everybody that ever worked for me, I said, buy a broodmare. The best investment you can make is a good broodmare.
That's good advice. That's really
buy
good
a
advice.
broodmare. Buy 2 or 3 broodmares, but invest your money in something that you can clip a coupon off of every year, and she'll keep making you money. And buy some young horses. I always bought, if I saw a good young horse, I'd buy it and take it home and train it up and sell it. But that's where you make the money to retire on, the future.
I think that's good advice now more than ever, because there's a lot of large breeding farms that used to be in our area that just aren't in our area anymore.
Good brood mares.
Good.
Yeah.
You gotta have good broodmares. And I'll tell you something. a lot of those mares, the big show records, are some of our greatest brood mares. But you know where some of the greatest brood mares I've ever had come from? I'll use one mare as a mare named Mizzen Topsail. I won $45,000 on her full brother a year older, and then she come along as a 3-year-old. She was my best fraternity horse. She kept coming up sore in front. So I thought, well, I'll breed her, I'll let her have a colt, and I'll get her up in a year or so and go show her in the opens in those days. We didn't really have that much age event in those days. It was open reigns. Well, her colts were so fancy, I never got her back up. She never won a dime, and one of the leading brood mares of all time.
One of the leading producers.
Done it for chicks.
Done it for checks.
Had too much motor to ever, like, couldn't keep her sound because she had too much motor. to
Katie
run.
Gunn. Katie Gunn came out of a sale pen.
Okay, I'll tell you another one. $1 million producing mare. That Shine and Spark mare. Ebony Shines.
Yeah.
I sold her to Howard Mann. Or no, I sold her as a yearling at the fraternity sale. Howard bought her from the people that I'd sold her to. Well, anyway, he had some Jake leg riding for him up there in Montana. And so he sent her as a 2-year-old. Well, that kid called me up one day and he says, man, this mare is red hot. She just running off with me. He says, all 4 legs are swelled up like telephone posts. I called Howard. I said, Howard, go get that yellow mare and get her to my house ASAP and get that idiot off of her. Well, they get her to the house. I mean, her legs are swelled up. Her head's blown off. I don't know. She's all spurred up, but she was hot. Well, I rode her myself for a long time, just getting her quiet. I have never rode a horse in my life that could stop harder or turn faster, correct her. I mean, as correct and as hard. I've never seen a horse can turn around harder or stop harder. But her head was blowing off and she was red hot. Well, I sent her to Jerry Fowler because Jerry is a real quiet kid. I said, just her maneuvers are just keep them maneuvers quiet, keep everything quiet. And the first time he showed her was at Oklahoma City. I said, Jerry, don't get her out of the pleasure lope in those circles, or you're gonna just take your -1/2 in those circles and go plus them turns and them stops, because you'll hit the wall if you go too fast in them circles. And he did. He won $15,000 on it.
Yeah.
But look what a brood mare she is.
Yeah, but I remember watching him show her in the finals, and he let her loose a little bit, and you went, wow, she is spicy. But that thing could stop from here to your door.
And you didn't have to school her either. You said, whoa, she just folded up in a ball.
I got a Howard Mann story.
Oh, I got one too after you guys tell this. I really want to ask this.
So, and I love Howard's one of my best friends. I mean, I really like Howard.
You can't help but like him.
No, he's as good a guy as you'll ever meet. But he comes up to me one year at the NRBC, and it's in April, you know. And
I think you're going to tell me the same thing I want to ask. I think you're going to tell it.
Yeah, he comes up to me, he says, you know what?
I got
Bob, every year he picks which ones he's going to sell to me, which one of his yearlings he's going to sell to me. This year,
I got him.
Bob. Yep. I got him. I said, why don't you do that? I bought them all.
You know how that happened?
Would love to hear how it happened on your side. Would love to hear it.
We're sitting in the living room one night, and Howard says, what would you take for all your colts, the whole group? And I said, well, I'd have to go count them. He says, no, the ones that aren't born yet, the ones that the mares are carrying. I said, well, Howard, I've never sold a horse before it was born before, ever. He says, well, what do you want? I said, how many are there? I looked and said, there's 24. There's 24 of them, because I want to keep 2 of them. So that leaves 24. He said, well, what do you want for them? I says, okay, before we start talking money, we need to talk some other stuff. If you buy them, you own them. If anything happens to them, you own them. There ain't no coming back on me. They're your colts. All they got to do is hit the ground and breathe, and then they're yours. He said, no problem. So he gave me a figure, and I looked at it. I give him a figure.
Enough to buy a small, modest house in Oklahoma with.
So he said, okay. So he bought the whole calf colt crop before it was born.
Impressive.
Yeah.
I thought it was yearlings, but yeah, now that you say that, I remember. Yeah.
I thought it was yearlings too, but I remember
No, these
hearing-
were unborn colts.
Now I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah.
He finally outsmarted you. He wasn't
He
going to
bought
buy the bad ones while you kept the good ones. He was going to buy them all.
That's what he did.
Nah, he was a
We'd
good-
be sitting in the living room. We'd be sitting. He always stayed with us when he come. Always in the guest room. And he'd say, "Well, what do you want for this colt? Or what do you want for that colt?" And I'd say, "Well, Howard, let's get them all broke, and I'll sell you the best one. Whichever one we want to keep for the fraternity, I'll sell it to you." No, he says, I want to buy them now. Well, he'd disappear. He'd go in his bedroom. Pretty soon he'd come back out with a check and he'd throw it in my lap. "Is that enough to buy them?" I'd say, "Yeah."
I got another good story too. So Lance Griffin is there one time, and you know everybody knows Lance. Lance, I like Lance too. Lance is smarter than everybody in his own head, and probably is smarter than most people.
He's smarter than me.
He's smarter than me too. So I'm okay with that. But he's at Bob's and he's walking around and he watches one ride around and he says to Bob, he says, "How much for that one?" And I don't remember the numbers, but it was somewhere in the area, maybe 50,000. And Lance says, "Well, I just reared back and offered him 30." And he said, "Okay." So, and Lance ended up buying, I think it was it Flintstone Wiz?
It might have been. I sold him a lot of horses.
Yeah.
But I'll admit it now. I always had to add quite a bit onto him when I priced him because I always knew he was going to try it.
Yeah.
Bicker with you.
Yeah, you had
Yeah,
to.
he says it didn't even,
I gotta know.
we didn't even go back and forth. He said, I went, uh-oh. Yeah, Lance probably knows more about trucking than anybody we know, but when it comes to horse trading, Bob knows more than anybody I know.
That is great.
I had a lot of fun with Lance, and Sam. We always had a lot of fun with her. She was at my house the night it burnt down.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Have you looked into
that?
What do you think?
Real surprise.
Did you call Lance after this happened?
Well, she called up. She said it was a real pretty June evening, and she says, "I want to come take some pictures of some cattle." I said, "Well, come on." So she got there about 6 o'clock, and we got on the gator. We're out in the pasture. We're taking all these pictures, and all of a sudden we see this smoke. So we go, "Oh, let's go see what that is." I go, "Holy crap! It's my house."
So she was with you?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're off the hook, Lance.
Yeah, it's all right.
Yeah. You guys are off the hook for
Did you ever
blackmail.
figure out what started that?
Yeah, the insurance company had some forensic experts out there, and they found it when they pulled the wire from the breaker box to the meter. Evidently, they didn't put that little silver ring on the end of that conduit, and that fire started right there at the breaker box.
Good to know. If we ever need to,
And I'll
Electrician.
tell you something else too. We had farmers and ranchers for insurance. They were amazing. I mean, no problem. I didn't even have to get a lawyer.
Yeah, just took care of you.
Just took care of it. Yeah, that's a great outfit.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, Bob, you've done a lot for, one thing, your reputation in this business through the years is doing a lot for a lot of horse trainers. I remember, you helped a lot of young horse trainers. You helped, you can name them on and on. Dean Latimer, Dwayne, Craig Johnson, Dwayne. I mean, and beyond Joe Hayes, beyond just, them working for you or work. I mean, you did a lot of good things for a lot of people, and I can remember we've talked about this before, and you guys know, when I was struggling a little in 08, and I bought a bunch of breedings from Bob, and it came time to pay the bill on all these breedings. I bought like 10 or 12 breedings to Wiz and something like that, and it came time to pay the bill, and I didn't have it, and I called Dean and I said, Dean Latimer. I said, I I don't have it. I said, I'm just scared to death. I got to call Bob, but I don't have it. And Dean said, just call him. He'll be fine. Just call him. So I called Bob, and Bob says, well, when can you have it? And I told him about 6 months later, and he says, well, that's just fine. You just get it then.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll never forget that. And I repay that anytime I get a chance. As long as somebody calls me or tells me what's going on, I'm always good. And that was a lesson I learned, and I think that's what we all learn. That's how we learn stuff from guys we respect, right?
Yeah,
For sure.
I think, as long as people are straight up forward with you, you can work through whatever. It's people that are not straight up with you and do a lot of the wrong things.
Yeah.
That's it. But people that are straight up and just come out and say, hey, hell, there ain't nothing that can't be fixed.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the hardest dang thing in our business anymore, and we all talk about it, and you probably don't have to deal with it as much anymore, but finding help. And the number of help that I have to find. I have 25, 27 employees, and
I'll tell you something. Help. I love the horse business. It's been so good to me. I mean, I've been blessed with the horse business. But help is a pain in all the years. I don't know how many people, they won't even give you a notice.
yeah.
And that's one thing. That's one of my pet peeves. Like Dean, when he decided he wanted to do like that, he gave me a year's notice.
Yeah.
But I got him. He said, I want to go to Italy. And I called up Archie and got him a job with Archie. I mean, when he come home from Italy, come to my house and stayed for 30 years.
Well, Dean was a lot better than Dwayne.
Yeah, Dwayne.
He got both of us.
Yeah, the night that we're getting ready to go to the fraternity the next morning, and he tells me I'm leaving after the fraternity. I said, well,
That damn Dwayne, he got both of us.
yeah, he did the same thing to
Yeah,
you.
he did the same thing to me, but we both love the Latimer boys and the whole Latimer family. So.
Yeah, I mean, I love Dwayne to death, but Dwayne cannot deal with situations.
No, this is where he's a social.
Yeah,
He has social issues.
He's a
He's a retard.
He cannot confront.
That was the
I
other
didn't
word.
say that. No, I didn't say
Yeah.
that. I said
Dwayne,
it.
just in his makeup, he cannot confront a problem.
No.
If there's a problem, ignore it.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
that's just Dwayne.
Yeah.
And we're still close friends today because I know Dwayne.
Yeah.
I know he can't.
You guys are getting way off track
yeah.
here.
No,
Come
this
on,
is
you guys.
great.
No,
Yeah,
it's
you
not
love it.
great. No, it's not great.
Yeah, no,
It's not great. Let's just park the damn bus on top of Dwayne while we're here, okay?
That's right.
Let's
That's
just
right.
instead of
right.
backing over him, let's just park the son of a bitch on top of it.
I
all
love
right?
it. You know how close I am to Dwayne. I had him on the show. We only have people we like on the show.
That's right.
So, no, Dwayne and I are really close, but we weren't for about a year.
Oh, I was a little mad at him too for a while after he left, but we got over it. But that's the difference in brothers. Dean, he gives me a year's notice.
Yeah.
But
Well, there could not be a bigger difference in brothers. I mean, Dean's RPMs run right here.
Like at 900.
Dwayne's run right here.
Yeah. At 6,500.
All the time.
He's redlining.
Dean's family.
Yeah. Together they're normal, but if you average them out, they're a normal human being. Yeah, no, that's a good family. Their dad and the whole bunch, their mom.
I think the world of all of them.
Yeah, that's a great family. And you've had some good help over the years.
Oh man, I'll tell you, I have had some, and I've told a lot of people this. The really good help that's worked for me is some of my really close lifetime friends.
Yeah.
The bad help don't like me much.
Yeah. I'm the same way.
Yeah, the bad help don't like me.
He has one exception because I was bad help, but we're still friends.
Yeah, you still guys are pretty tight for some reason.
Yeah, he has one exception to that rule.
No, I like to give Gunny shit, but he really was good help. He was very good help.
Aside from being very dumb, I was pretty
At
good.
times, that's right.
I'll tell you, when you're training horses for a living and you're running a horse operation, the people that you're working with, you either get real close to the connection, or you get where you can't stand them.
Yeah.
It's going to go one way or the other. I mean, you either on the same page and you're lifetime friends, or you're on different pages and it's going south.
You know, with Gunny, you got those guys that are they just get there through hard work. Just being determined, being hardworking. That was not Gunny.
I saw that come on. Where's he going with this? I can see it.
That was not Gunny. Gunny had lots of talent and has lots of talent and gets there just through his talent. It's not exactly his.
Hey, but you know what? Everybody has their own way.
That's right. That's right. We're all getting there.
There's a million ways to skin a cat.
Yeah,
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Gunny skins that cat his own way.
You guys got your roads you drive down.
That's right.
I got my
yours.
lane I stay in. Okay.
That's right.
And speaking of roads, I did learn today that
Asphalt's the
redneck
key.
repellent.
That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah.
No, so back to being influential in the whole reign. And what about when your book came out? How did that come about?
Well, there was a little old gal that I did a lot of articles with her. Her name was Kathy Kadesh. And Kathy was so good to work with. Well, she wrote that book, and I can't spell, don't worth a crap.
Yeah, we know. And you're on Facebook. We know. We've given you a pass, though.
I spell bad, but I get the point across. If you read it carefully, you'll know what it is.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well,
And you don't care. That's the best part.
And I don't give a crap.
Yeah.
I said, if you don't like my spelling, don't read it. But anyway, I mean, that's just a known fact. But Kathy was so good. I said, Kathy, I'll just tell you what I wanted to say, and you record it, and then you go write this thing. Well, we'd spend hours. I'd just be talking into a recorder about this and that, and she'd go. And I always liked working with her because most people, like her and Pat Florestein, were my two favorite people to work with because they would write things the way you talk. Now, most people would try to fix my bad grammar and make it sound intelligent and screw the whole meaning up.
Yeah.
But Kathy and those two ladies were just amazing. They would write everything just the way you told it to them.
Right.
So Kathy wrote that whole book just off of recordings.
Yeah.
I'd meet her and we'd sit down for 2 or 3 hours and just do a chapter or 2 or 3 chapters.
No, because I remember when I bought that, it was like in a feed store in New Mexico. I brought it. I have it.
Yeah.
It's 25 years old.
You want him to
I
autograph
want him
it.
to sign it because
Yes!
when I got that, there was the Al Dunning book, and then there was that book, and it was just there was so much information in that. I mean, it was amazing.
That book is just basic horsemanship.
Yeah.
It's not getting into all the fancy tricks and stuff. It's just basic how to training a horse. To me, and I've had a couple people work for me that had genius mentality. They couldn't make a horse trainer in a million years. They complicate everything. A horse trainer, a guy, to be a great horse trainer, all you need is common sense.
Yeah.
Just common sense. Just A, B, C.
Well, when he said that he couldn't make a horse, I was thinking of the guys that I know that work for him that have made horse trainers, and none
they're
of them
not
are
geniuses.
They don't I can't read no names.
No,
It's all right.
No. Let's not park a bus on anybody else. Okay.
I've never met these geniuses. Just ain't gonna make a horse trainer. So they want to complicate it and gimmicks and that. And the only thing that works on a horse is just common sense.
And I mean, you brought up the book for influential. He's also the only person that I know that has a bit shank named after him because Greg makes a Loomis shank.
You know how that bit shank come about?
By mistake, obviously.
I had an old customer years ago, lived in Wyoming, and he made me a snaffle bit. He made that shank, and it was a snaffle bit. I used that bit for years. And finally, the snaffle broke, in the center. So I took it to Greg to fix. And I said, Greg, can you duplicate this bit for me? And he said, yeah. I said, well, you know, I think those shanks have most to do with how well that thing works. I said, put a bunch of different mouthpieces in that shank. He says, I bet you they'll all work in it. So he started making all of them, and that's how that come about. And I can't even remember the guy's name that originally made that bit for me.
But you remember the horse you sold him.
Oh yeah. I tell you, I can't remember people's names worth crap, but I'll never forget a horse or a cow.
So I usually ask this question when we're running out of time, but I'm not going to ask that question because you've had so many great horses in your life. I usually ask which horse was the most influential in your life, but I'm not going to ask you that this time. I'm going to ask this time, which horse in your past history do you wish you could have back to do it over again? To do it different, to do it better? Which one? Is there one?
I'd love to have Liz back. I'll tell you what.
Would you do it better? Would you be better?
Oh, way better. I'm too old to do it now, but I know so much more than I did when I was winning. I wasn't near the horseman then that I am now. It's just I'm too damn old to do it now. Mm-hmm. But I have learned so much. Like I retired, I'm 77 years old. Hell, I retired, 22 years ago. I've learned more in the last 22 years just playing around at home and watching and learning this and learning that. I'd love to be 30 years old and go do it again and know what I know right now.
But don't you think in this industry, if you don't get 5% better every year, you're falling behind?
If you don't improve every year, you're going to fall. It's like I think I have a lot more. I have learned so much in the last 22 years since I retired. I'm just too goddamn old to do it.
Yeah.
But I've learned so much. I would love to go back and ride. I can name a half a dozen horses. I'd love to have
Name
one
them.
back. I'll tell you, one of my favorite horses to show was Surprise Enterprise.
Surprise Enterprise.
I love that horse. You know, that horse, when I'd go to a major event, now this horse would run straight as an arrow. He would never cheat. He would never sit up. He would never try to outthink you. And if you threw his head away and let him go as hard as he could go, he'd relax. And he was the funnest, easiest thing to show you ever sat on. But if you went to a quarter horse show and tried to cruise him, you'd have 22 penalty points. He would get a nervous wreck when you just tried to cruise him. I mean, he was, and people always thought he was hot. He was not hot. He was quiet, but he was dangerously feely. He was so feely in the face and so feely in the belly, and all you had to do is just keep him happy, keep him quiet. Yeah. But he was so. The first year I bred him to a bunch of cold mares because I thought he had, I was confusing all that feel with staying. I couldn't spur them things out of their doggone tracks. When we started breeding into Topsail Cody mares and Docalina mares, that's when the good ones started showing up. You had to breed him to something with some sting, or it just didn't work. He crossed on Docalina mares great. He crossed on Topsail Cody mares really good. But that horse was so fun. When I first got him, Bill had him and rode him in the Fraternity, and Bill had that horse so broke, but Bill never taught a horse a lead change, and I can't stand a horse that don't change off my lead. Right. All I did to change him to fit that horse did everything with his shoulder here and his hip here, and all I did was just put his shoulder in the middle and teach him to take a pleasure horse lead departure and break his hip loose where he'd change off my leg. And that's the only two things I did to him.
And that was a special horse.
Oh,
it really was.
One of the greatest I ever sat on. I mean, he like when you'd ask him to turn around, you would think left, and it just the way you'd turn your hand, there was no backing out. He was gone.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, everything was instant.
Yeah.
But a horse like that, if you're really with him, oh, he was fun to show.
Yeah. No, that was a great horse for sure. So one of the questions we get asked often in our comments that we've never addressed is, what would, if you weren't a horse trainer, what would you have ended up doing?
If I wasn't a horse trainer?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a scary thought. Because that's the only thing I give a flip about. The only other thing that I really enjoyed wouldn't make money.
Yeah. Yeah. Well. Okay. Well, it costs money.
What?
Yeah. So there's money trading hands somewhere. You would have figured out a way. You know what? You would have figured out a way. There's no doubt in my mind.
What are you doing now? What do you do now for your hobbies, or what do you do now to pass your time? You ride a horse or two?
I tell you what, if Nikki's having a problem with, like, she came up to me a couple
Nikki
months
Snyder.
ago. Yeah. And she was having a little turnaround problem, so I rode every day for 2 or 3 weeks, and it was so simple. She just had that shoulder up here too high and had to get it back in the center where that inside leg could move. It was an easy deal. But she's such a good girl.
Yeah.
And if she ever needs a little help, I'll go ride with her. I never help her unless she asks. If she asks, I'm there for her.
So you ride now a little bit to pass the time? Do you have a one horse picked out that you enjoy that you ride, or
Well,
do you
if I
just?
want to ride, I go saddle up a 2-year-old and go check the cows or go through the pasture. I'd rather just get on the 2-year-old that needs the miles.
How many acres do you have now?
How many head do I have?
How many acres?
Acres.
962.
Wow. It takes a while to check that pasture or that fence line.
Yeah.
The 2-year-old's broke by the time you
Yeah.
get back.
And I got 8 brood mares and about 300 head of cattle.
Yeah.
And now you've changed up even the longhorn industry.
And we don't even know about that, but I think you had just as big of an influence on that as reining horses, haven't you?
Yeah.
I raised the biggest horn bull that ever lived. He's 103 inches tip to tip. And
Wow.
I bred him. I sold $400,000 worth of semen on him, and he brought $500,000 if I'd have sold him at 2 or 3. But I kept him, and I've sold a lot of dollars worth of bulls out of him and heifers. I got $165,000 for him as an 8-year-old.
Wow.
I had some people, they turned out to be real good clients of mine, Oldenburg Farms, Wayne Oldenburg, and I had his ranch manager, Angie Rosine. She was talking to me one time, and she said, when they first started, and they had some longhorns and stuff, and they were talking about getting into the reining horse business. And I said, I would breed, so they bought a couple of brood mares from me, and I said, I would breed this mare and this mare to top sale Wiz. And I said, he's at Bob Loomis's, and they go, you know Bob Loomis? He's really big in the Longhorns. I mean, they only knew you from the Longhorns.
From the Longhorns,
Yeah,
yeah.
they didn't even know.
I even had
It's
horns.
funny, yeah, they're coming into the reining horse business, and I didn't know that you were that big into the. I mean, to me, you're Bob Loomis of the reining horse business. To them, you were Bob Loomis of the Longhorn business.
Yeah.
And that was funny. You know Bob Loomis?
That's awesome.
That was a pretty big deal to them.
The Longhorns to me was my retirement program. My retirement program was a set of brood mares and a set of cows. Now, I can't do commercial cows. I'm not going to own something that somebody gets on the radio every morning and tells me what it's worth.
Yeah.
I want something that has some clear blue sky to sell.
So you had the foresight there to start measuring them things from tip to tip and trying to breed them that way?
Well, see, Longhorns have 100 different horn shapes. So I like the ones that go straight out, that have the big tip-to-tip measurement. Then they also have a total. But the cattle that really bring the money are the ones that have a lot of horn, they have a lot of color, and they have conformation. The total package. And they're good milkers and a good udder attachment and a good calving record. Those are the ones that make money. A lot of people get hooked up on one thing. you know, and then that just one thing can be faddish. If you want something that will last a lifetime, you want the whole enchilada. You want the whole, every quality.
Yeah.
And it don't matter what industry you're in, those are the animals that'll always make money.
And you don't have to spend $1,500 a month to get them trained.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the thing about the long. If I sell a cow, like I just sold a cow, one cow for 20,000, 25,000, one for 20, and 3 for 15. Now, if I sold 5 horses for that much money, about a third of it would have been profit. With those, I'll bet you that was 90% profit.
Yeah.
My wife and I do all the longhorn work. I mean, one of my Mexican boys helps me now and then, but I do all the shots. I do all the worming. I buy serum for shots on worming. They don't get sick. They don't colic.
You don't have to feed them.
I
They
don't
eat
have
your
to buy
900
shavings.
acres.
They don't have to clean a stall.
Yeah.
8 months out of the year, they eat grass.
Yeah.
I buy some fertilizer and some weed spray, but they eat grass. In the wintertime, I hay them and I cube them once a day, but that's only 3.5 months that I have to feed them. So if you sell a $25,000 to $50,000 cow, it's 90% profit.
Yeah.
You know, or better. But there's a lot more profit in it. And you know, sometimes my yearling heifers are bringing as much money. Now my colts that I keep and train up and sell as 2-year-old fraternity prospects, they're the ones that make money. But the ones I take to the legacy, my yearling heifers bring as much as they do.
Yeah.
You know, you know, my yearling heifers will bring that much, and there'll be 50 of them.
Yeah.
And no fitting, no training, no feeding. You just
Yeah. I mean, cattle, they got thick hide. They can run through a barbed wire fence and not get a scratch.
Yeah.
You know, a horse runs through a barbed wire fence, he cuts his throat and all 4 legs off.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Well,
You know,
go ahead, Bob.
talking about that, we had a thunderstorm come through. I mean, it was so bad it blew a 14 by 14 overhead door down the alleyway in my barn. Anyway, it spooked my yearling studs. And they run through a 5-strand fence. You know, you take those white caps that you put over the T-post,
Yeah.
and then the white, it's number 9 wire that's covered with plastic. That plastic wire and those plastics, they took 60 foot of that out. There wasn't a scratch on one of them.
Wow.
That's the only time I've ever had horses go through a fence that I didn't have nothing to doctor.
Wow.
So if you ever want to build, and they're I like raising them yearling studs in electricity.
Yeah.
They get a respect for a fence.
Yeah.
But if you ever want to build a really safe stud colt or stud pen of any kind, boy, I recommend that highly.
Well, I've got the white PVC fence, and it works great, but it'd be a little spendy on 900 acres.
Yeah.
It works better on 150 than 900.
Yeah, that'd be a little. Well, see, all my horse fences are smooth wire, and all my cattle pastures are barbed wire.
Yeah. So to go back to that original question, Gunny, what would you do if you weren't in the horse business? I know what you'd like to do.
No.
Yeah.
If I could start over again, like from after high school and stuff, I'd probably be into construction because I like building stuff that's tangible and I like seeing what I accomplished at the end of every day.
Yeah.
And with horses, you don't get that. I mean, you beat your head against the wall, and one day they're just better at it.
Yeah.
I mean, you think you accomplish little things on a daily basis, and sometimes you see improvement, but really it takes months before you see that improvement. So the daily satisfaction's not there.
And there's plenty of days in there where the improvement is just vanishes.
Yeah, and
then
you go backwards 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and then you go, how do I fix this? And
Then you come home and you're grumpy and your wife doesn't understand. Well, our wives know now why, but they still don't like it.
I would be in construction, I think. I'd do something like that.
You know, when you have a bad day riding or you go to a show and don't do good, really, I was kind of a miserable person to be around.
It's terrible,
Well,
isn't
it's
it?
devastating. I've always said, you go right along here and then you win something, and you go here, maybe just a little bit, because that's what you expect. And if you have a bad day, it just you go straight to the bottom.
But actually, Bob, though, it's worse for Tom because we all have women in our lives that like sympathize and say, "No, it's okay, honey. You're gonna do this. You're gonna." Not his wife. She tells him she is the dream crusher.
She's not here.
Yeah, but let me tell you something.
Oh yeah, but we can still park a bus on top of her.
When his wife and my daughter were that big, they would meet me at the gate after I made a run and tell me everything I did wrong.
That's where it started.
That's where she still does it.
You,
She
Bob.
still does it.
And they did the same thing to Tim.
Why didn't you fix that shit right there, Bob?
Man, that's how.
I wanted to wring both of their necks on a couple occasions.
I know.
We get it. We get it.
We see the abuse that man
I mean,
does to Tom.
they were just that big, and they were at the same
Well,
thing.
she's not much taller, and I still want to wring her neck.
But you know what pissed you off is she's usually right.
Right. That's the problem.
We're not putting that on there.
And we're done for this week.
Anyway, what would you do, Joe? If you weren't a horse trainer, what would you do, Joe?
Man.
Let's move away from Mandy being right.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of with Gunny. I'd have to be making something, I think. I'd probably do construction or do something. But no, I think in construction it's the same thing, man. You think you're doing something right and not tear it all apart.
You get it built and go, well, I
That's
really didn't
okay,
like it like
man.
that. You're gonna take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
No,
You're right.
but yeah, I think I'd have to be making something or be creative in, some sort of way and build something that I can, get some satisfaction out of. Working inside and a job inside, I couldn't do that. There's no way.
Oh God,
There's no way.
I did that a little bit when I was really young.
Yeah.
That's torture.
Yeah. No, I worked in a drugstore.
Punching a time clock and
Yeah.
staying there till 5 o'clock doing what you don't want to do.
Well, I mean, knowing all you guys, obviously, you could sell anything to anybody. I mean, anything to anybody. So that's always, and that's what you love doing more than anything.
I love selling.
More
I love
than anything.
selling.
Gunny, I think, would rather be a professional golfer than anything. And Joe, I think, would rather be on the beach surfing and maybe renting out bicycles.
Yeah.
And that would be his
definitely.
deal too. But both of them have wives that won't let them do that.
Now Megan would go to the beach.
She would?
Yeah, we could build huts. That's what we could do is build
If you could
huts
make it
on the
profitable,
beach.
yeah.
Yes.
Oh, he can make it profitable out of the trunk of his car.
I can, like Bob, I can live in a tack room with my clothes on a broom handle.
The only thing I've ever really cared about is animals. Horses, cows. I've had pigeons since I was that tall. But if I was going to make it, it'd be with animals of some kind. I'd be raising some damn thing.
You still have the pigeons?
Oh, hell yes.
Do you?
Yeah.
Boy, right now I'm at war. I got a cat getting my pigeons. I got Cooper Hawks getting the goddamn things. I mean, me and the Cooper Hawks and the cats were at war.
No, those pigeons are smart. I mean, they're
No, they're
pretty
dumber
neat.
than hell.
I thought because we had some friends
Yeah,
that
but
had the racing pigeons.
Oh, they're smart. I got rollers. And rollers are dumb. No, racing pigeons, they're really smart.
Yeah. No, that's, I think Mike Tyson. Didn't Mike Tyson have the rollers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Mike Tyson raises rollers.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've had them since I was just little.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, gentlemen, I think we went way over our time, but I feel great about it. I had a good time.
This conversation could be endless.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had.
There's 9 million more things we could get into.
And we will. But we'll have you back for sure.
Yeah, anytime.
It was a lot of fun.
I've enjoyed tonight a lot.
And we really appreciate you coming on such short notice.
Oh, listen.
And Bob, you're one of the very few that said yes to the first phone call that we've made. Normally, the person that sits here, we had to beg and plead to get, and they were the fifth phone call that we made.
Really?
No.
No.
That's not true at all.
Oh, I thought it was.
No. No, everybody, we generally, that's generally the MO is I call these guys the morning we're going to shoot and I say, who should we do today? and then I call them at about lunchtime, and then everybody's been great.
Well,
That's how Hollywood works.
We appreciate your time. We
Well,
really
you know,
do.
I enjoyed the heck out of tonight. My wife will appreciate it because she gets so tired of hearing my stories.
Well, we appreciate it, and everybody, thanks for being with us again. And don't forget to comment and share our videos and the big drawings we're going to have at the end of the year. And thanks for being with us again. And again, thanks, Bob. It was a great show, and we had a lot of fun.
Good, big time.